Welcome back to TO Kids, and today we have special guest Ethan.
Hello, I'm back. Thank you guys for having me again.
Today we'll be talking about separating the artist, if it's ethical to separate the art from the artist, with the question, to what degree is it ethical to divorce the origins of the knowledge from the actual knowledge?
So, from an ethical standpoint, like the first thing that you're supposed to do with ethics is to view it from an objective perspective. So, take yourself away from the situation and understand that this artist, they did something bad and we shouldn't support them anymore. And I guess if you're supporting the art, then you are supporting the artist in a way. But I feel like you can't do that in this situation because a lot of artists a lot of artists in Hollywood are like bad people, but they make really significant and influential art that have, defined people's childhoods or got them into a specific like interest. I mean, there's so many like J.K. Rowling and Michael Jackson and Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein and all these people who have done bad things. And we've recognized that they did bad things, but they've been just so influential that it's really difficult to separate the two.
I feel like that's definitely a significant point. When you mention like people who are really significant in childhood and who have significant effects on like pop culture, I feel like especially when it comes to like huge influential people like that, a lot of the times they're so ingrained into pop culture that like it's hard to separate from them at all because their influence is always going to be there. And so you can't necessarily just be like, this person did XYZ, so I can never listen to their music again or I can never watch anything they've made again because I guess it's not that simple. And I think the most important thing is understanding where the line is drawn and not necessarily, just cutting it off and not really thinking about it further because it's like, okay, let me just never acknowledge this person's existence again. Whereas you could maybe step back and if you still enjoy their art, you can think about how does those bad things that they did, how does that impact their art and how does that change how I see it?
Yeah, I like.
In my opinion,
Go ahead, Cindy.
are you sure?
Mm?
I think that the real problem comes with the idolization of celebrities and famous people, and that's why we have this big problem with if we should separate the art and an artist and how their bad decisions kind of impact us is because we idolize them. We made them into this person that can never make a mistake or never do something wrong. And when they do something wrong, it hurts us personally because we made that emotional connection even though we don't know each other. You don't know the personality or like the real person of a celebrity. You only know the media identity that they portray. And I think that's the big reason why we have this like conversation of separating the art from the artist is that like idealization of them.
I feel like we can tie that into cancel culture and how the media expects famous people to be perfect and never make any mistakes. And as soon as someone finds out that they've done something in their past that they probably regret, a tendency to cancel them over probably something fairly insignificant if you were a normal person, let's say.
But I feel like that the problem stems from not insignificant acts like what you did like 10 years ago when culture was significantly different from what it is today. But I feel like it like stems from artists who actually have like opposing moral codes from us. Like take for example, as Clea said, J.K. Rowling, she like has been on this rant on Twitter and everything. She's been exposing her transphobia against her transphobia and how she doesn't view trans people as the gender that they assign themselves. Um, of course, that is a heinous act because that perpetuates the idea that trans people are dangerous predators who only switch their genders because they want to peep into like the opposite genders like locker rooms or bathrooms or whatever. And that's despicable. Like how can you accuse a person like that? And But J.K. Rowling is also the author of a series that has impacted fiction and has impacted the childhoods of many people. So when people see J.K. Rowling making these transphobic comments, it shatters their reality of, oh, the art that I really enjoy and that I really connect with is made by this person who also wants to condemn these people and exclude them from society and make them seem like they're terrible people. Where does that line cross where I can still enjoy the art, but yet acknowledge that the artist who made the art is a bad person?
I think that with J.K. Rowling, I feel like the thing where you could not separate the art and the artist is when the artist and their like moral codes like significantly affect the art. Like you see with Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling kind of shows her opinions about people and has a very stereotypical view of like characters, like Asian characters and them not having a very significant like personality outside of like their stereotype. And she kind of writes this into her works, and I feel like then you should recognize that, okay, maybe this art it's also as bad as the artist.
Yeah, I definitely agree that you have to see that reflection of their morals into the work, or how, like, if you're supporting that work, are you supporting the artist and allowing them to have a platform where they hurt other people? Despite them being able to make good art, are you still helping them hurt others?
What you just said with regarding the platform, I think that's where a lot of the issues stem from. People now with media, not everyone should have the ability to state what they think for everyone to see. Had she, gossiped with her friends about it, no one would really care. But because she used Twitter, right, as a platform to share it with the world, that's where us humans, this is not meant for us to have as a tool. I don't think that people can say one thing and the whole world knows. That doesn't happen when you have a one-on-one conversation with someone.
I think it's
kind of reminds.
So, I got a question to like before. I was just gonna ask, like, so do you guys believe that social media like kind of like propels like this kind of like this kind of like idea of like perfection that these like social media stars like, or like very influential people like have to hold? Because like you can probably say that like, hey, like back like before like the early 2000s when social media really started like snowball into like this very massive thing, that like people that were very influential and like big in their field and like inspired a lot of kids and were very impactful, like did these terrible things, but we just didn't know about them due to the lack of social media and the media coverage like based on them. So like, do you think it's like now that because it's coming to the forefront and we're seeing like these ideas that these people believe that may be different from ours, that we're starting to have like this cancel culture and like having that difficulty in like separating the art from the artist?
I think. Oh,
Kayla, go ahead.
yeah, Kayla, go ahead.
I think. Okay, so I don't know where to start. Okay, so we have social media, right? And like we're like, oh, we're making our young kids be inspired by these perfection people, and then but we still had back. I feel like it's more information is more easily like, accessible nowadays compared to like it would be like 1950s, because like in 1950s you'd have a magazine of a girl shaped in a certain way, and then you'd be like, oh, I have to look like her when I go to school, and then you wouldn't have anybody to talk to about it. It's not easily like you're not able to connect with others as easily as you would with social media, because like in social media it's more easier to expose others than it is to just look at something and believe you should be this way. I think it's beneficial and it's not really necessarily a bad thing, but it's however you may see it.
I think it comes a lot. Social media has both negative and positive side effects on this whole issue of separating art from the artist. In like one aspect, we're able to see things like, for instance, J.K. Rowling, that if we didn't have social media and we didn't have the internet, we wouldn't have been able to see these like deep-seated like morals and ideas that she has that have been affecting her art that we can re-examine. and which is obviously a positive thing that we're able to see these like negative things and how they've been affecting us without our knowledge through her art. But it's also, in my mind, a fairly negative thing because there are some situations where people aren't separating the art from the artist, and they're taking it to the extreme. It's, say, like we mentioned it earlier, and the example that came into my mind was Kevin Hart, where he had said something like 10 years ago that was like mildly offensive, and there was some award show that he was hosting that he got fired from because of this mildly offensive thing that he said. And in my mind, that is taking not separating art from the artist too far.
Yeah, and
I-
Go ahead, Cindy.
Go.
No,
No, go
you should
Yvonne.
go.
I said a
Okay.
lot. Go Yvonne.
Thank you. Anyway, I think it comes, like, social media comes with a price of connecting the artist with the audience, and not saying that that's a totally bad thing. But the thing is that social media has created this platform where the audience can finally sort of like directly interact with the artist. You know, they can tweet at them, they can write comments on their posts directly, and it creates this connection between the audience and the artist, and they feel, at least in the audience's perspective, they feel as if they're connected to the artist. And it creates like that false connection and perception that the audience is like personally connected with the artist, even though the artist, you know, only just sees the general audience rather than, you know, each individual. And so since the audience sees as themselves as like since they have that direct connection and communication with the artist, they feel as if their opinion is important and overweighs the artist's opinion. Like, they feel like they have this ethical and moral obligation to call out the artist when they do something wrong, or when they do something that they don't believe in. And it creates this false perception that the art that was created by the artist solely belongs to the audience. Now, I do believe that when the artist distributes their art to the public, it is no longer their sole property. They no longer hold the sole right to control what the audience interprets in the art. It is both in the artist and in the audience in which the art can they can produce these interpretations of the art. So there's these two arguments of like it solely belongs to the artist and it solely belongs to the audience, in which that separation of the art and the artist's argument manifests. So is it in the audience? Is it in the audience's responsibilities to is it in the audience's responsibility to like separate the art from the artist? Like, to what extent do they have an ethical obligation to choose the art that they consume if the art that they take is produced by a person who has like opposing moral codes?
I feel like it all comes down to the audience, I guess, taking responsibility in the fact that people need to be aware that, like, what was mentioned about, like, idolizing these people. I feel like the audience needs to be aware that they don't have the full story no matter what, because they are not personally involved in the situation. As an audience, we are watching these things happen, and we're not personally involved. So we'll never fully know like the person who said that and like what the truth is behind why they said that or why they did the thing that they did. And also we will never fully know the extent of the situation and the impacts that it had like directly in the moment that it was done. And so I feel like audience members need to take that into account. But I feel like the issue that comes about there is that a lot of the times the audience isn't willing to have that nuanced perspective, because it's easier to have this one-dimensional view of these artists as, you know, they have to be perfect or they have to be XYZ. And so when they aren't, there's this lack of willingness to accept change. And I feel like, you know, you can see that in like people individually. Some people are unwilling to like accept new information that counters what they already believe that they know. And so if someone believes that someone like maybe hasn't done anything wrong, when information comes in that questions that, a lot of the times they're unwilling to change their perception of this idol as perfect. Or the other direction, if they believe that someone has done something like irreversibly wrong, even if there is counter evidence that maybe the person has grown from that or changed from that, a lot of the times I think people are unwilling to accept this opposing knowledge, and they just have like a one-dimensional set view of people, and I feel like that's the issue.
I still think that there comes to this point where the artist has to be able to I had the word, but now I forgot it. But they have to just realize what they did was wrong, and they need to reflect upon it. And we can't always kind of baby an artist and be like, you know, they're fine. Or we have to reflect upon ourselves and see if we're willing to let the bads that the artists do, you know, like if we're okay with that morally, if we're going to support an artist that abuses women or something, and like keep supporting that artist because we enjoy the work. And do we like the work more, or do we want, or are we going to separate and stop watching it, or stop supporting that artist because you don't want to support that kind of platform? And artists and like famous people, they have this platform where they have to be self-aware about like the stuff that they say, and the influence that they have on people, because they have that platform where their words affect so many people, that they have to be aware of that aspect.
Yeah, and I think that's also an issue with separating the art from the artist, because there's these people that claim, you know, oh, this art, like I'm just going to ignore who the artists are, and I'm just going to enjoy the art for itself because it's an amazing piece of work. But what they don't realize is that even though you are having that separation, the artist is still benefiting from that mindset. Sure, you may not like the artist, but like you still want to get the art. You're still helping that artist profit from that work and help them gain a bigger platform and gain a wider audience. So it's also an issue that people have to realize, that these people are still profiting from, even if you think that the art is separate from the artist.
What if they're dead?
Yeah.
Oh,
No, that's a fair point. No, that's a fair point.
I mean, I feel like if they're dead at that point, like you could support that artist more and be like more open about it, because like they're dead, and like at that point it's not like those like proceeds aren't directly, you know, benefiting the artist, but rather like maybe like their family, for example, like their kids, or like maybe like their mother. And I feel like more people like might be more open-minded to that. They're like, okay, like yes, like this person represented something bad, but like maybe because like they're dead due to like an accident or something like that, like we can support this artist and like his family, you know, and like push aside the fact that like, hey, they're dead, that's over with, you know, and like they're never gonna, you know, do this bad thing again. But maybe we can like turn this bad into something good by like benefiting a family or like the people close around like said artist.
I think it's important with the situation, especially if they're dead, like to see the full picture. I'm just thinking Michael Jackson. He had a lot of sexual assault allegations against him, but of course he's dead now. But he also had a very big influence. He was, you know, king of pop. Like he had this big influence on the music industry. So just seeing like the documentaries like Returning to Neverland, and seeing them kind of like demonize him for those sexual assault allegations, but then also you have to recognize that he was very influential and his music is still highly regarded. So it's really understanding the full picture, and I feel like you can do that more once they're dead, because, you know, you're not directly supporting them. But you should also, I feel like, you know, care for the victims, and it's just interesting. You can really see it from an objective point of view that way. But with Yvonne and her earlier comments that, you know, like you should still recognize that the artist, is profiting off of you giving them that platform. I think you could still, I guess, like criticize the artist. Like it goes back to that entire point of like idolizing the artist. Like you have to understand that they are human, and you can still criticize someone while also, you know, liking their work. You know, you don't have to always idolize this person at 100% and, you know, like every part of them. It I feel like continues like how we do, you know, person to person and friend to friend. Like you can criticize them and not love, I guess, who they are, but like maybe what they do.
Yeah, I think something Kalea said is, in my mind, like the most important thing to like understanding this idea of how we separate the art from the artist, and that's understanding the influence that the art has on like society as a whole. Like she said, Michael Jackson, obviously like one of the most, if not the most influential musician of like the modern era, but he has all of these negative things against him. And like she said, it comes down to like this very nuanced perspective that we take even outside of the arts. Like if we talk about like the founding fathers or something, we recognize the good they did for America alongside the bad they did in regard to like slavery and things like that. I don't think you can take this idea of separating the art from the artist without taking a very nuanced perspective, because there are some people where the bad things they do just completely outweigh any good their art could have caused in the world. But then there are people like Michael Jackson or like someone that I know of, that I have a good example is like Ike Turner, who was extremely abusive to Tina Turner, but helped found rock as a genre. You have to like take that nuanced perspective of what did their work bring to the world versus what negativity did the person bring into the world.
So we were talking about Confederate monuments. How do you feel about that? Because it's like art, right? It's art, right? Should we get rid of it?
I mean, I feel like that's
think that's
different.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think like at that point, like that's part of history, and I feel like you shouldn't like destroy it or get rid of it, but rather like preserve it. And like, yeah, some people might not agree with it, but like at the same time, like it's a part of like the United States' history. You can't just, you know, take out like, I forgot like how long the Civil War is, but like that was like a pivotal role almost, you know. And I feel like that's different from like separating art from the artist, because like without the
We're
Civil
getting
War,
a bit off topic.
yeah,
We're
like
getting off.
yeah, but like I feel like that's just a completely different, you know, set of circumstances.
Regarding, Cindy, I know you've been waiting for a long time.
No. You know, you can go.
Okay, regarding what Kalea and Jackson said about you have to look at the grand scheme of things, and we started this conversation. So what can we conclude about her behavior and her art?
I think what we can all conclude is that we can never truly separate the art from the artist. I mean, the artist bleeds their identity into the art that they put their work into. I mean, whether you like it or not, I mean, there are some like subtle and not so subtle experiences and perspectives of J.K. Rowling that she puts into her work. I mean, it's inevitable. Our art is the art that we make is a representation of our identity. So we can never truly separate the art from the artist, but what we can do as the audience, as the responsibility of the audience, we can criticize, as we've said before, we can criticize with empathy and an understanding of who the artist is, and maybe look at their work in a different perspective now that we have this new knowledge of who the artist is and what they're trying to say within their works.
Jack,
I also
I
think
feel like
that we.
Oh, you can go, Cindy.
I was gonna say that we come from a place of privilege where we can separate the art from the artist, right? Where people that the artist hurt can't separate it. You know, every time they are reminded from the art, they are reminded of the pain that they went through because of the artist. We're allowed to. We don't have that emotional connection from that pain that artist causes, so we can have this debate from like can we separate art from the artist? But because we're not directly hurt by the artist. That makes sense.
I really want to emphasize the second part of Yvonne's argument. Like, yes, there are some like art and artists that you just really cannot separate, but it really comes down to understanding the full picture and understanding the positivity that they bring or that their work brings and the negativity that the person brings, and also the person and if they're willing to change and if they have changed. And then also with cancel culture, allowing, I guess, the justice system to punish them and understanding that a person should try or will want to try to go from, thing that they've done wrong. And we should allow that to happen and, completely deplatforming someone for some insignificant or insignificant, but they like are, growing like elements and events like is not always the best option.
I would think that at some point that like social media gives platforms to people that don't need a platform, if that makes like the stuff that they just spread hatred and they need that like deep platform. They need to reflect upon their own things before they're able to say it and have a platform to tell other people their thoughts in that manner. So I don't think everybody needs or deserves a platform or a fan base.
Yeah, and I guess my final question is, would you guys separate an artist who, well, okay, no, sorry, let me say that again. If you guys liked an art and it was made by an artist who, did some questionable things in their life and is probably maybe still doing questionable things now, will you guys still buy the art and enjoy the art? Or will that fact of the artist being a bad person still linger in your mind and like turn you away from that artist and their art in general?
It really depends, because for me, I have a situation where I'm like listening to this artist. Okay, so I started listening to like mindless self-indulgence recently, and then like I listened to like their entire discography, and the amount of songs that this person has said the N-word in it is astronomical. I don't know. I'm like listening. I'm like, oh gosh, because I see them. The singer is not a black person, but they're saying the N-word. But some of their songs still slap. I'm not gonna lie there. I don't know. I feel like it depends. It really depends on how good the artwork is. And
I think it depends on yourself and your morals. If you're okay with knowing that artist did bad things and then are still able to listen and enjoy their art, I think that just comes down to individual preference and like
comes down
if that
to
goes against
or circumstances.
Yeah, for sure.
The art racist. They just say the N-word.
I think
go ahead.
it also comes down to like how deeply the art has affected you and pushed knowledge off onto you. Because like speaking from my own life, if I would have a much harder time separating something like Star Wars from George Lucas if George Lucas was found to be like a mass murderer or something. Because it has like Star Wars has deeply affected my life. But if it was just like some movie that I had seen like once or twice, and the like director was revealed to be like a really bad person, to me it wouldn't be difficult at all to hold on one second. I would be able to like combine the artist and the art in that scenario and push it to the side in a way that I wouldn't be able to do with something that has deeply like connected to my life.
Yeah, you'd be experiencing that cognitive dissonance.
I'm the opposite of you, Jackson. I grew up reading Harry Potter, and like J.K. Rowling was a really big like role model. Like I was like, wow, feminist, right? But then when I found out like her point of views, I couldn't look at Harry Potter the same way that I used to. I reflecting upon the books, rereading it, you can see how her point of views kind of bled into her work. It was a reflection of herself in a manner, and I just couldn't bring myself to enjoy it the same way I used to. And it was just easier for me to just not support somebody like that. But that's my own opinion, and I can't support anybody who I know hurt somebody or hurt a population or a group like that.
In my experience, I like spent a lot of my childhood, I guess, listening to like very like rap music and like people like Chris Brown, who they promote these ideologies of kind of like sexism and homophobia and like things that directly affect me, and it's a lot of cognitive dissonance. It's just understanding that I do not support these artists, but this like this is so influential and it's been in my life this entire time, and just to get rid of it and discard it like it doesn't have any significance to me is like kind of impossible. So I have to really understand and criticize the artists and criticize that, oh, I really like that what they said or what they did, but understanding that I can't just disregard the art completely.
And that's all we have time for today.
Yay!
Yay. Thank you for watching Dr. Grapham. I hope you enjoyed this week's topic. We'll come back next week for another TO Kids.
Can I say a few words, please?
Please subscribe.
Please subscribe. Hit that like button.
Like button. Share.
Go ahead, Ethan.
Go ahead.
All right. I'd just like to, extend my gratitude towards this wonderful podcast for allowing me to be back on. And Dr. Grapham, I'd just like you to be reminded to keep your eyes out for Plato's Academy, the best podcast on the planet.
All right, we're ending.
Cut that out.